Hello, this is Jazz Rasul, and this is a video taking you through a guide of the Atmascape image, which gives you a visual overview of your life and your mental health and how capable you are in meeting your own needs as well as helping other people with theirs. In this video we're going to look at looking the images from a point of view of time and seeing what is it like to see images from different periods, and is it possible to make some kind of judgment call on how things might be progressing in your life, how things might be trending, if you like, in your life. In this particular view, you can see what I've done is I've taken three separate profile images from different days and I put them next to each other, and you can literally see that they are all different on different days. It's amazing, but most of these images, the scores tend to only be different by just 1 or 2 points, and yet you're getting this variation. So one day I might have scored 6, another day I might have scored 8, another day I might have scored 7 in an area, and you can see that there's this variation that still happens on a day-by-day basis. Many people think that they don't change on a day-by-day basis. They do. Even if it's just by 1 point, it can dramatically alter how things look on your overall view of your life. Now, with these particular images, you can see that some areas tend to stay the same and other ones seems to be changing quite a lot. For example, the area to do with intellect for myself tends to stay quite blue across these 3 images, but you can see in the second day that some of my capacity to do with my intellect, it kind of spread out over my personal boundary over to the area of my abilities to do with helping other people tune in to their thoughts and to their creativity. So it looks like something that I've been doing well in within my own life has literally spilled over my personal boundary, and it's begun to affect other people and how they tune into their thoughts and their creativity in a positive way, because the score here is quite blue. Now the problem is, when you look at these images in a kind of static form like this, it's difficult to know what kind of flow is happening from one area of your life to another. You could probably figure it out if you really looked carefully. However, what would really be useful is if the flow was visualized in some kind of way. And it can be done. For example, I can take this image on the left and this image in the middle, and I could take the numbers that these colours correspond to on the left image and the numbers on the middle image, and I could just work out what the scores might be on average between the first day and the second day, and I could use as average scores to create another image in between, and I could keep doing that, and really, if I wanted to, generate a dozen images that represent 12 different distinct points between one day and the next, and you'd very clearly be able to see how things are progressing. But again, even that would be just a series of static images. What would be really useful is if somehow those images could be stitched together into some kind of film strip, and the images could be run like you often do in a flip book, cartoon book, and get a movie created where you could visually see the flow of strengths and the flow of areas where you're having difficulties or challenges in your life. Now, the software Energy Diamond can actually do that. Here is an example, something that's been generated in that way. You can see the starting image is up here on the top left, the middle image is here, and the final image that we had on the third day is over here. And what the software has actually gone and done is, for a start, it's changed the scale that's used for the colours, and it's taken what the lowest score is across all the profiles, all 3 profiles, and it's used that as the bottom level, the bottom rung of the ladder for the colours that are going to get used, the bottom level of the scores. And then it's taken the highest value across all 3 profiles, and it's used that as the upper limit for the colours. So the lowest score across all 3 profiles, that's going to get to be seen as red in the movie. The highest score across all 3 profiles, that's going to get to be seen as blue in the movie. And the scores that are average across the whole set of 3 profiles, they'll be typically coloured kind of turquoise or green. And you can see what's happened here is between the first day's image and the second day's image, I've generated 24 intermediate images which gradually move from the first image to the second image. And then I've generated another 20 odd images which take you from that second day's image to the third day's image. And it's possible to take each one of these frames and stitch them together sequentially and get a bit of software which will turn that into a movie that you can just play. And when you play that movie, you'll actually be able to see how the colours shifted from one day to the next, and from that day to the last day that's actually looked at in this sequence that we're actually exploring. So let's just actually have a look at that final movie when we take all 3 of those profiles, generate the intermediate frames, and then stitch them together into a movie. What would that actually look like? Here you can see a QuickTime movie that's been created by stitching all those frames together from those 3 different profiles. And you can see that the very first image that we'll actually see on the actual movie when we play it, if we just rewind this back to the beginning, you'll be able to see that. There we go. You can see it doesn't quite look like what we saw earlier, which was the very first image tended to be quite red in these areas, but you can see the colours look different here, and as I said, that's because we've changed the scale. We're using a scale which used the lowest score across all 3 profiles to be red and the highest score to be actually blue. So the colours look a little bit different, but the accuracy nevertheless is the same, is representative. Now this is the first image with the new scale, and if we go to the end we can see the final image, but using a colour scheme that has the lowest score across all the profiles as red and the highest score is blue. And if you go somewhere in the middle, you can see that that's the image that was on the second day, coloured according to the scale that we've actually got. If you want to, you can, in QuickTime, go through frame by frame by just clicking on the left and right arrows on your cursor keys, and literally you will see that the image changes frame by frame, and you can see how the colours shift and flow from one moment to the next, from one day to the next. If you look at the date, it'll tell you what date the frame corresponds to. And here on the right you can see which frame is being looked at out of the total number of frames that were generated. There's 49 frames that were generated in this movie, and we're currently on frame 18. And you can see the name of the profile that we're moving from, what was the previous profile that we're moving from. If we continue, then you can see slowly but surely the image that corresponded to the second day starts to appear. And this is probably around that day. You'll see that at that point the date changed, so you can see it goes from the 6th here to the 7th. So this is the day the second profile was actually done, and this is the actual profile itself. So as soon as the date changes, you know you're looking at the actual profile for that day, and then from then on obviously it continues to change and morph until it gets to the final profile, and the very last image, very last frame of the movie will correspond to the very last profile and what was done on that day. So this is the actual profile from the last day. Now the great thing about this is you can go backwards and forwards, and you can see how things shift and change and see how they emerge, and you can probably make a guess as to why a particular area started to get undermined. Where did the cause for that actually come from? So as an example, if you look at this particular scene that was happening on the 6th of October, there's an area here that's developing on how I actually manage my values and how I manage my security, and you can see it's beginning to become quite low in score. And as I progress through the day to the next day, which is the 7th, you can see that that area actually grows and starts to get lower and lower in score until it actually gets to the day of the 7th, at which point it all becomes probably the lowest area that's been scored over all 3 profiles. So over all 3 days, because this area is coloured red, it represents the lowest scores I must have had over this period, and it's showing that I'm obviously got a habit which is not serving me in terms of how I'm managing my welfare, well-being or wealth, and it's particularly to do with trying to find new ways of managing my welfare, well-being and wealth. Whatever way I'm going about trying to find new ways to do things to look after myself in terms of my physical well-being and welfare and wealth, they're not working. I need to try and find some new ways. The ones that I seem to be employing are not serving me as well as they could. Now, bear in mind, although this looks pretty bad, the colour here actually represents a score of about 5 or 6. So it's not as terrible as it looks. You always got to take into account what scale is being used. If this was 0 to 10 scale, then this red would represent 0 or 1, and that would not be good, especially if it's an area that's of importance to me. But this particular score here corresponds to about 5 or 6. So I'm actually doing fairly average in life, although across this particular period, this is the area that I seem to be doing least well in on this particular day. Now let's just go back to the beginning of the movie and just play it so you can see what it looks like when you just play the movie. Now the great thing about this movie is it's a bit like an MRI. You can play it and the tiniest features can mean something in terms of a shift that a person's going through in their life, or even a shift in terms of how they are in helping other people, or even a shift to do with how they're being affected by other people. Sometimes you can see things happening in your personal life and those things drift over to what you're doing with other people. Sometimes you see stuff happening with other people, how you're going about helping them meet their needs, and it drifts over and affects your personal life. It crosses your personal boundary, in other words. So sometimes it's possible to have challenges that are going on in your life, and if you watch the movie, you might find those challenges actually they drifted over from something you were doing with other people. So it's stress that's been caused by other people. Sometimes you get a drifting occurring not from the left side to the right side, or vice versa. You get a drifting going from the top to the bottom, or vice versa. If you have a drift of a challenge or a red area go from the top area of your personal life to the bottom area, then that's something that's psychological stress that's beginning to affect you physically and may actually make you physically ill. You can also get the opposite too. You may be going through some physical stress and maybe you resolve it, but it's ends up leaving you with an imprint, a psychological imprint of stress too. So you can have your energies drift from one part of your life to another. Equally, your strengths can drift too. As we saw earlier, in case of my intellect and how well I was doing with that flowed across the personal boundary to the area of how I help other people with their intellect and creativity, and I actually started helping them in that area. So if I just play things a little, you can actually see how that actually happens. Let's just push this frame by frame, and you can see that personal area, you can just about see it here, has now expanded and gone across my personal boundary. So that's showing that something I was doing well for myself is now being passed on to other people and helping them to tune into their thoughts and their creativity more effectively, because this colour's here blue, and you can see there's a habit or focus going on there, and this habit is blue, rounded, so that means it must be a good habit. I seem to be helping other people in an effective way when it comes to the way that they think and they work with their creativity, their visions for life. Let's have a look at some of the other areas. Let's just play and see what actually happens. Now here you can see this area of red, and it's not possible to see that it actually came from somewhere else. It's to do with how I'm finding new ways of doing things around my security, around my welfare, well-being and wealth. And if you just rewind, you can actually see that that challenge area of my life, it originated from the area of how I was practicing my values and putting them to use practically in my welfare, my well-being and my wealth. So this is a challenge that arose from a completely different area of my life. The way I was practicing my values has actually led me to undermine finding new ways of doing things in my life, new ways of working with my welfare, well-being and wealth and looking after those things, and new ways of engaging with my values, maybe discovering new values. So whatever I'm practicing at the moment, it's something I know is going to affect me and my ability to discover new ways of doing things in the near future, to do with my reality, to do with my security and to do with my energy. And here's the consequence. Obviously you can kind of track things and maybe project forwards mentally and go, if that carries on, I'm going to have an issue in this area, and maybe I ought to go and prepare for that and do something which will prevent things from getting more challenging in an unnecessary way. So the movie is great to use to make predictions as to where things might go, but also to see where things came from too. Let's just play the rest of it and we'll see if there's something else that's worth looking at. Now if I just scroll back to this point here, you'll notice that after I've extended my energy for managing my own intellect in a positive way out to other people, watch what happens with that strength. You'll see that it drifts back into my personal space, like that. Now, what's actually gone on there is you can see that this area to do with how I help other people tune into things has grown, and the challenge of that, of helping other people tune into their creativity, has grown. I'm not doing so well there. I'm not developing myself and my capability there very well, or it's leaving me not being able to help other people as effectively as I could. The consequence of that happening is actually reduced my ability to help other people tune into things intellectually. So because I'm finding it challenging to help them with their vision, their goals in life, that's actually pushing back my ability to help them intellectually. So this is kind of holding me back a little bit. And what it means is that until I get better at helping other people tune into their creativity, their vision, their purpose in life, my strength of intellect isn't really going to engage people in terms of how they tune into their own thoughts and their own feelings. And it's important that I address this kind of deficit in helping people tune into their vision and their goals and purpose in life. Otherwise, all the strengths that I have are not going to make much difference, much dent in other people's lives. You can see I do happen to have a strength over here to do with helping people come up with new ways of thinking, build and develop their intellect and build and develop their creativity. My challenge is in helping them just get tuned into it in the first place. If I can get them tuned into it in the first place, then maybe the new ways of thinking that I'm offering them, or new ways of envisioning their life, are things that they can actually start to engage with and start to do something about. You can literally look at this area here as almost like a desert, and this area here like a lake. If you've got a desert and you want to turn it green and you want to make it life come to it, you need to irrigate it. You need to use the nearest source of water to actually do it. And these areas of strength are literally like nearby lakes. And I could draw upon my intellect, or I could draw on my ability to help other people with their intellect and their creativity, and helping them find new ways of working with those areas. I could take those two strengths and I could import whatever I'm doing into this area that I'm finding a challenge with, helping people to tune in to their thoughts and their creativity, and I would find that my ability in that area would probably improve. So I'm literally borrowing from the nearest reservoir to irrigate this area that's a little bit barren. So if I use my strengths, my intellectual strengths, to help people tune in better to their creativity, or I help my strengths in helping people think differently and come up with new goals to help them to tune in to what's happening currently in their life in that area, then that area of red or yellow is going to start to turn green, and then eventually turquoise, and eventually blue, and I'm going to find that my ability to help other people tune into their intellect, tune into their creativity, is going to improve. Over here you can see there's a vast area of focus to do with helping other people with their reality, especially how they emotionally connect into it, and you can see that it covers quite a large area, especially to do with security and emotion, and how they're tuning into things across that reality. And that's useful to know. It shows I've got a skill set which is really helping people in those areas. And if it's something I'm not taking advantage of yet, then I should be going out and helping people with my capacity that I've got in helping them emotionally make sense of their welfare, their well-being and their wealth, and also looking at how their welfare, well-being and wealth can effectively support how they are emotionally within themselves and how they are with other people. Hopefully that's given you a really useful guide to the energy diamond Atmascape and what sort of things can be used to actually be applied to. The individual static images have their use, however for real effective shifting of awareness it's really helpful to do the profile on a daily basis or on a regular basis, and then stitch the images together perhaps over a few days or a few weeks or even a year, and just see patterns that you've got that you might need to address that are recurring or that might be new, or areas of your life that seem to be stuck and not moving or changing at all that really need to shift. Maybe there are areas that are changing too much and you need to settle them. If you get experience in interpreting these images in these movies, then you can really fine-tune how you live your life, and you start meeting your needs in a way which help you to fulfill your purpose, and maybe even go beyond your own purpose and help other people, and maybe, just maybe, go on and make a difference to the world. Thank you.